Well, everybody, after 4 episodes, we're finally going to get the chance to make it to the 2.0s. Splatoon 2 really is a crazy game. We're going to break down some of the most important long-term buffs and the new meta that started from it. Subscribe if you enjoy. Patch 1.4 is absolutely massive, so I'm going to start by going through some of the less impactful changes that are important long-term. Even this is still skipping a lot, though. Splash and 52 both get slightly more range, Zap gets lightweight and a bit faster strafe speed, Pro gets much faster shot speed, better accuracy, and better movement speed, 96 gets better accuracy, and finally gets the return of its old 10 damage nerf from Splatoon 1 being reverted, H3 gets faster shots and slightly better accuracy, and Clash, while still never relevant, at least got its big blast radius here. All rollers will get slightly better horizontal paint under itself, and Dynamos became slightly less bad at painting from high ground. Flings' horizontal also gets an extra 25% range, Ink Brush gets its immunity to enemy ink when rolling, Bamboo becomes twice as fast while charging, and Mini Spelling gets more damage and movement speed, while Curling Bomb Rush travels farther. Even GooTuber is getting in on all these buffs. You can now store a shot even when it wasn't fully charged, and it got a 5-frame decrease before it was fully charged, being a significant increase in its kill time, as well as doing more damage at 180 total, matching that of the E-Leader. I mean, none of this really mattered, but they tried. They definitely tried. Special Power gets a host of buffed effects, the most notable of which being increases to Jetpack's radius. Quick Super Jump stacks well in lower quantities, which would make it common past this point. Last Ditch Effort now gives 8 of each ability instead of 6. Respawn Punisher is much stronger for you and enemies. And finally, Drop Roller now works in all directions instead of forward. Again, this isn't every change, but you can see a huge push for increasing main weapon power, and to be honest, it's welcome. Almost all the changes here were good ones, rather than seemingly random ones, and the game's poor balance really required these fixes. That said, let's now get into the major buffs. First up is dualies. Normal dualies get 10 points for special cheaper on both kits, an 8-frame downtime decrease, meaning you can actually act out of dodge rolls significantly faster, and finally make them feel fast, and become more notable main weapons. Dualie Sculpture got that same buff, but also 9% better paint and the ability to slide. Yup, that was a buff, and now this weapon finally got its unique identity. These weapons wouldn't be meta yet, but it's not gonna take much longer. What would start to become meta right away is Brellas though. Both Brellas got damage reduction from shooters, Splatlings, and dualies, no longer break when contacting Baller, kinda odd that it did that since it can tank the explosion and still will for quite some time, and most importantly, got much better damage. This is the start of the infamous 90 damage Brella, giving the weapon a fast and consistent 2-shot that would terrorize shooter and dualie players for years to come. Tenebrella also gets its normal movement speed 10 frames faster, and normal Brella's shield opens 8 frames faster and can strafe 38% faster with it open. In exchange for all that, Brella gets plus 20 points for special, but I mean, what a trade-off, right? This thing moved from a pure support to a real fighting weapon, and Tent was solid, especially given that its shield lingered for 8 seconds at this time, though it would be more relevant when it got more buffs later. Before we can finally wrap up this patch, 2 more major buffs. Splatlings get a 20% movement increase in strafe speed while shooting with run speed up, which is huge for restoring their old mobility. And a brand new special got put into the game recently, Bubble Blower, which also got huge changes, in addition to a newer forged Splattershot Pro kit. This buff made its bubbles that were already huge at the time have a significantly easier time being popped by teammates, since they now deal 20% damage to all bubbles. In addition to that, the Bubble Blower user also gets their main weapon back 20 frames faster. This made it an amazing special that would be overshadowed for a brief time, and that is finally everything meta relevant in patch 1.4. We can finally talk about this meta. Well, what didn't change from before is all the ray weapons, all of which are still good, with Heavy being a lot better in particular. Splattershot was also a bit more common with its competition nerfed, even though it's 10 points for special more expensive. Everything else, though, is brand new. Outside of the ray options, Brella was for sure the best main weapon in the game at the time. It still got a very powerful and consistent Ink Storm, and the main weapon was amazing at the time. This is before paint, ink efficiency, and special output nerfs, but most importantly, other classes weren't buffed to counter it at this time. You could tank so many things like charger shots or blaster directs, making specials or AoE that can hit around the shield the only real counter to it. The main weapon had amazing damage and solid mobility to fend for itself with almost no bad matchups, since no blaster is really that strong right now. This meant, in Japan at least, where people started using the weapon more quickly and had less issues with latency killing you through the shield, it wasn't uncommon to see 2 or even 3 Brellas in a comp. The Western scene still had a few though, including myself. But that scene opted to utilize a lot more of Burst Bomb, bringing back a bit of Tri-Slosher to pair with Vanilla Splattershot, since both had specials for a fast tank refill and armor was still strong against powerful options. Some other niche options included things like Zap for armor, Rapid Pro for a Rapid plus Rain niche, and Splattershot Pro was ran a little bit for Rain as well, but these weapons were more seen at the time because it required a bit to develop the meta, so it's not too major. By the way, Brella also briefly had a bug for a little bit after patch 1.4 where you could just shoot and shield at the same time. Also worked with Tent. Nobody really fully utilized this because people didn't even really understand that this was a bug and not something to do with lag, but yeah, that was a thing. This brings us to patch 2.0, which was a lot smaller. Tri-Slosher also got its 62 damage back and a bit more strafe speed, as well as a minus 20 points for special, meaning it would go back to 190p and get decent armors. However, Burst Bomb spam is going to be way worse because this patch nerfed Inksaver sub by 33%, ending the ability to easily run triple burst since it now required 2 pures, which meant that it was no longer practical at all. Along with that, Shock got 200p. Besides that, this patch was pretty light on other nerfs. Rain painted less, Brella and Range got 10 more points for special, and Ray got a tiny duration nerf. Range was picked a little bit against Brella, by the way, but it's actually more relevant after this, which is why I haven't mentioned it yet. Buffs didn't have much either here. Missiles were made a bit faster, though they're still so slow at this time, and the Inkjet player's hurt box was made slightly smaller and its shots slightly faster. The only other large buff besides Tri was Tenebrella. It now got its fast shield launch and 3 seconds faster shield regen, which was also 25% cheaper to do. However, the shield only lingered for 6 seconds instead of 8 as a trade-off. Outside of ending burst spam stuff, the rest of Ray and Brella meta options were still very good. However, there is one more change here that made the game feel way more playable, and that's the health recovery delay. This has been 1.5 seconds since the game came out, and it finally got dropped down to 1. This nerfed chip damage and made it much easier to recover health back to full, on top of a slight change to enemy ink that made it a little bit less punishing to step into it. All of this combined makes Ray like 5% more tolerable, I guess? Seriously though, dealing with 1.4 Ray was genuine hell. Look at this match of Stingrays on a stage like this and just how long I'm damaged for. With how good people got later at Ray, this would be so broken. But with that said, we finally entered the 2.0s and escaped the most chaotic era of Splatoon 2's balancing, at least for now. With main weapon power increased and new options on the table, a path to a more balanced and fun game is on the horizon, but we still got a long way to go. So stay tuned for next time, and we'll see how well they did.